In this episode, we explore value and intensity with color. Welcome to Stecker Studios. We're going to start our value and intensity scales by drawing two rectangles at the bottom of our page. Each rectangle is 5 inches wide by 1.5 inches tall. Place one rectangle on top of the other, and then we're going to break each rectangle into 5 boxes, measuring 1.5 inches tall by 1 inch wide. I like to use a graphing ruler to construct my rectangles first, and then later I can go back and break each step up. Now with both rectangles drawn, I can separate each rectangle into 5 1-inch wide spaces. We're going to label our value scale tint on the left, pure hue in the middle, and shade on the right. We're going to label our intensity scale cool on the left, warm on the right, and neutral in the center. Value scales measure the lightness and darkness of a color, while the intensity scale measures the color's saturation. For your value scale, select a color. I recommend using a primary or a secondary color that you can mix up very consistently. Place your pure hue in the center. This is going to start our value scale. Now, we're going to take our color and add it to white. We want the first one to be a very light tint. We're going to place that on the left of the value scale. As you can see, a tint is a color or hue with white added to produce a lighter value. Now that we have our tint of the color, we're going to add a little bit more blue to that color so that it falls in between our tint and our pure hue, and place that in the value scale in the middle. You want to make sure that each step of your value scale moves consistently from one tone to the next. So as we move from the tints to the shades, it should be getting consistently darker. Now as we begin mixing our shades, it's important to start with a new pile of paint. We don't want to start adding black to the tint that we've already made, otherwise the paint's going to come out very gray. So start with a fresh color and begin adding a little bit of black to it. Be very careful about how much black you add, because black will very quickly overpower the color. Remember, we want to try to maintain a consistent, even change from one tone to the next. Now for the last column, we're going to add a tiny bit more black to that color. We don't want it to be totally black, but we do want a nice dark shade. Now as we move on to our intensity scale, we're going to be measuring the color saturation. To do this, we need to choose two colors that are complements. This means those are two colors that are across the color wheel from one another. So take a look at your color wheel, find two colors that are directly across from the color wheel from each other, and we're going to use those two colors. One of these colors is going to be a cool color and one of them is going to be warm. So think about which one is associated with fire for the warm tone, and think about what color is associated with water or ice and use that for your cool tone. Now I've selected violet and yellow, so I've placed violet in the cool side and yellow on the warm side. Now I'm starting to slowly add a tiny bit of that violet to my yellow and placing that on the warm side next to the yellow. Now as we begin to add a little bit more violet to that color and working towards the center, it becomes more neutral and more gray. You might notice that some of the colors appear to turn slightly brown. Working on my cool side again, I'm starting to add yellow to my violet in order to step this color down a little bit in intensity. Again, as I start working towards the neutral, it's going to become more gray. So for the center neutral side, you do have to try to balance your two tones, which can be tricky. Mix the colors back and forth. I'm looking to make sure that it's not too violet in this case or too yellow. So do take your time in mixing that color to make it neutral. Here's an example of our first one done. color wheel, value scale, and intensity scale. And here's an example of a value scale and intensity scale with 2 other colors. Thank you for watching Stecker Studios. Please like and subscribe.